October 5, 1943, 0900 hours. High above the turquoise ring of Wake Island, the air conditioning in a Mitsubishi A6M0 doesn't exist. At 20,000 feet, you are battling two enemies, the Americans, and the freezing thin air that seeps through the uninsulated cockpit. But for the pilot of the Imperial Japanese Navy, the cold is a small price to pay for what he sits in. He is strapped into the finest dogfighter on Earth. For 2 years, the Zero has been a ghost, a phantom. It turns tighter than a swallow, climbs like a rocket, and dances around the heavy, sluggish Allied fighters. The Americans call it Zeke. The pilots call it invincible. On this morning, the radar on Wake Island picks up intruders. A flight of intruders. The Japanese scramble. They climb expecting to see the stubby barrel-shaped F6F Hellcats they have been swatting out of the sky since Pearl Harbor. But as the Japanese flight leader levels out his wings, he sees something else. They are blue. Dark, glossy sea blue. And they are massive. Through the scratched plexiglass of his canopy, the Japanese pilot squints. The silhouette is wrong. It's too wide. The wings are squared off and huge. The fuselage looks like a beer keg with a propeller attached to it. It lacks the elegance of the Zero. It lacks the slender, dangerous curves of the German Messerschmitt. To the refined eye of a samurai of the sky, this new American plane looks like a mistake. It looks like a flying brick. History tells us that in these early moments, the Japanese pilots weren't afraid. They were amused. You can almost hear the radio chatter, the incredulity in their voices. This is the F6F Hellcat, but they don't know that name yet. All they see is a plane that weighs nearly twice as much as their Zeros. In the physics of 1940s aviation, weight is the enemy of agility. Weight means you can't turn. Weight means you die. The Japanese leader tips his wing. He signals the attack. He expects this to be easy. He expects these lumbering blue giants to wallow in the air, trying to turn inside the Zero's lethal arc, only to stall and fall prey to his 20mm cannons. He dives. The wind screams over the Zero's cowling. He picks the lead-blue plane, lining up the deflection shot. But then, the physics change. The brick doesn't wallow. The American pilot spots the dive. And instead of panic, instead of a desperate, sluggish turn away, the Hellcat pilot slams the throttle forward. This is the moment the laughter stops. The nose of the Hellcat rears up. And it keeps going up, and up. The Japanese pilot watches, stunned. A plane that big shouldn't be able to climb like that. He pulls back on his own stick, trying to follow, trying to keep his nose on the target. But the Zero's engine creates 1,100 horsepower. The beast in front of him, the Pratt & Whitney R2800, Double Wasp is churning out 2,000 horsepower. It's raw, brute, American industrial force. The Hellcat rockets vertically, defying its own bulk. The Japanese pilot stalls out, his engine gasping, while the Hellcat loops over the top with a terrifying grace. Suddenly, the hunter is the hunted. The Japanese pilot looks over his shoulder. That massive square-jawed grill is filling his rearview mirror. And then, the wings of the Hellcat light up. Not 2 guns. Not 4, 6, 6.50 caliber M2 Browning machine guns unleash a convergence of lead that tears the air apart. The sound is a rhythmic, deep-throated chug that vibrates through the bones of anyone nearby. The Zero is built for speed, not survival. It lacks self-sealing fuel tanks. It lacks armor plating for the pilot. It is a kite made of magnesium and hope. The first burst from the Hellcat catches the Zero's left wing. There is no bounce, no spark. The wing simply disintegrates. The flying brick has just sawed a legend in half. As the Japanese pilot spins toward the ocean, trailing smoke, he takes a terrifying realization with him to the waves. The Americans didn't just build a bigger plane. They built a trap. And the Imperial Navy has just walked right into it. November 1943. The Solomon Islands. Let's change the perspective. Put yourself in the cockpit of that blue giant. You are a 22-year-old corn-fed kid from Iowa. You have 300 flight hours. The man trying to kill you is a veteran of the China campaign with 1,500 hours of combat time. In a fair fight, he wins. He has the experience. He has the finesse. And sure enough, you make a mistake. You turn too wide. You lose energy. The Zero slots in behind you at 6 o'clock. Sound of rapid mechanical thuds. Bam, bam, bam. The sound is terrifying, like someone swinging a sledgehammer against a metal trash can right next to your ear. The Zero 7.7mm machine guns are raking your fuselage. Then the heavy 20mm cannon connects. In a Wildcat, you might be dead. In a Zero, you would be a fireball. But you are in a Grumman. Behind your head is a slab of hardened steel armor plating. It weighs hundreds of pounds, but right now, it is the only thing stopping a 20mm shell from turning your spine into shrapnel. You flinch, waiting for the fire, waiting for the explosion. It doesn't come. You look at your fuel gauge. The needle is steady. The Japanese rounds punched right through your wing tanks, but the rubber lining, the self-sealing technology, swelled shut instantly, choking off the leak. No fire, no explosion. The engine doesn't stutter. The double wasp just keeps roaring, indifferent to the damage. This was the philosophy of the Grumman Iron Works. While the Japanese were building samurai swords, sharp, light, and brittle, Leroy Grumman and his engineers in Bethpage, New York, were building flying tanks. They designed a Hellcat with one specific goal: pilot survivability. They knew that a plane can be replaced in a week. A trained naval aviator takes 2 years to replace. This design wasn't an accident, it was a reaction. After capturing the Akaten Zero, a crash landed. Mitsubishi, found in the Aleutians in 1942, American engineers dissected the enemy. They found the Zero's secrets. They found its lack of armor. They found its inability to dive at high speeds without the wings tearing off. So they built the Anti-Zero. They gave the Hellcat a wide landing gear stance so rookies wouldn't crash on heaving carrier decks. They designed the wings to fold back against the fuselage like a bird so carriers could pack more fighters into the hangar bay. They sacrificed beauty for brutality. Back in the Solomons, the Japanese pilot behind you is confused. He has hit you. He has seen the pieces fly off your tail. Why aren't you falling? He gets closer, frustrated, burning his limited ammo. That is his fatal mistake. He assumes you are crippled. You shove the stick forward. The Hellcat, heavy as it is, dives like an anvil. The speedometer winds past 350-400 miles per hour. The Zero tries to follow, but its controls stiffen at high speed. Its fragile wings enter compression maneuverability problems. You pull out of the dive. The Zero cannot. As you level off, shaken but alive, you realize the truth of this machine. It forgives your mistakes. It absorbs the punishment. It allows an average American pilot to survive long enough to become a deadly one. The Japanese pilots, however, are beginning to realize that their bullets are bouncing off them, monsters from the east, and the Empire is running out of veterans to fly against them. But the Hellcat wasn't just built to survive skirmishes. It was built for an event that is rapidly approaching. A battle so one-sided, so overwhelming, that it will earn a dark, cynical nickname in the history books. The U.S. Navy is gathering the largest armada the world has ever seen. And on the decks of those carriers, the Hellcats are warming up for the Turkey Shoot. June 19, 1944. 1,000 hours. The Philippine Sea. The radar screen glows with a sickly green light. Inside the dark, humid Combat Information Center, CIC, of the USS Lexington, a radar operator stares at a chaotic mess of blips. He blinks, thinking it's a malfunction. It isn't. Many bogeys, he reports, his voice tight. Bearing 260. distance 150 miles. The blips aren't just a few planes. It is a cloud. A massive singular wave of destruction. Japanese Admiral Ozawa has emptied his carriers. He has launched over 300 aircraft in a desperate gamble to crush the American fleet invading the Marianas. On paper, Ozawa has a chance. His planes have longer range. He can strike the Americans before they can strike him. But Ozawa doesn't know about the Combat Information Center. He doesn't know that the Americans are watching him from 150 miles away. On the flight decks of 15 American carriers, the loudspeakers crackle with a code phrase that every pilot knows means trouble. Hey, Rube, it's a circus term. It means fights on. Hundreds of F6F Hellcats roar down the wooden decks. The air is thick with the smell of exhaust and salt spray. They climb to 25,000 feet, stacking up in layers, waiting. This is the Hellcat's defining moment. This is what it was built for. The Japanese formation appears. It is huge. Zeros. Jill torpedo bombers. Judy dive bombers. They are flown mostly by teenagers, hastily trained replacements for the veterans killed in the Solomons and Midway. They are flying straight and level, inexperienced, nervous. And then the Hellcats dive. What happens next isn't a battle. It is a massacre. It is industrial-scale extermination. The Hellcats slash through the Japanese formation with impunity. The heavy, 50 caliber rounds tear through the unarmored Japanese planes like paper. Lieutenant Alexander Vrachu, a ace with a distinct handlebar mustache, finds himself in the middle of the chaos. His engine is leaking oil. Windshield fluid is smearing his view. He should turn back. He doesn't. Vrachu spots a loose formation of Japanese dive bombers. He tucks his Hellcat in behind them. He doesn't spray and pray. He waits. He gets so close he can see the rivets on the enemy planes. Short burst. The Japanese plane explodes. He moves to the next. Short burst. Another fireball. In a span of just 8 minutes, Vrachu uses only 360 rounds of ammunition to down 6 enemy aircraft. Around him, the sky is raining burning aluminum. The radio chatter is a continuous stream of Splash 1, Splash 2. One American pilot, breathless and surging with adrenaline, keys his mic and shouts a line that will define the battle forever. Hell, this is like an old-time turkey shoot down home. By sunset, the statistics are impossible to believe. The Japanese lose nearly 300 aircraft in a single day. The Americans lose roughly 30 Hellcats. The ratio is 10-1. The Great Marianas Turkey Shoot breaks the back of the Imperial Japanese Naval Air Service. They didn't just lose planes. They lost a generation of pilots. They lost the ability to wage offensive war in the air. The Hellcat has done its job too well. It has cleared the skies so completely that there is almost nothing left to fight. But as the smoke clears over the Philippine Sea, the nature of the war shifts again. A desperate enemy is a dangerous enemy. The Japanese High Command realizes they can no longer match the Americans in skill or technology. They can't out-dogfight the Hellcat. They can't out-climb it. They can't survive its guns. So they decide to stop trying to survive. If the pilot doesn't plan to come home, he doesn't need armor. He doesn't need skill. He just needs a bomb and a target. October 25, 1944, 10:50 hours. Leyte Gulf, Philippines. The war has changed again. You are patrolling at 8,000 feet, circling the escort carriers below. The sky is overcast, gray and heavy. The radio is chaotic, but the panic in the voices is different today. It's not the sharp bark of combat commands. It's the scream of disbelief. He's diving. He's not pulling out. Shoot him. Shoot him. Below you, you see a trail of smoke. A Zero is screaming down toward the deck of the USS St. Lo. It doesn't jink. It doesn't weave. It flies with the terrifying, steady purpose of a mesmerizing arrow. The anti-aircraft guns on the ships erupt. The sky fills with black puffs of flak, but the plane keeps coming. It slams into the flight deck. A fireball erupts that seems to swallow the entire ocean. This is the birth of the Kamikaze, the divine wind. For the Hellcat pilots, the rules of engagement have just been shredded. For 3 years, you fought to kill the pilot. If you shot up his engine or wounded him, he would bail out or retreat. You won. Now, killing the pilot doesn't matter. If he is dead at the stick, the plane is still a 6,000-pound bomb hurtling toward your friends, your bed, your food, your fuel. You have to disintegrate the machine. The Hellcat is forced to evolve from a hunter into a shield. The Navy develops a strategy called the Big Blue Blanket. They flood the air with F6Fs, creating a permanent roof of blue steel over the fleet. This is where the Hellcat's massive ammo capacity becomes its greatest asset. A Hellcat carries 2,400 rounds of 50 caliber ammunition, enough for about 35 to 40 seconds of continuous fire. That sounds short, but in air combat, it is an eternity. You spot a Zero emerging from the clouds, heading for a destroyer. You roll the Hellcat over and dive. You can't just poke holes in him. You have to saw him apart. You hold the trigger down. The 6 guns roar, the vibration shaking your entire body. You watch the tracers converge on the Kamikaze's wing root. You aren't aiming for the cockpit anymore. You are trying to physically sever the wing from the fuselage. Chunks of metal fly off. Smoke pours out. Finally, the wing snaps. The Zero tumbles violently, splashing harmlessly into the sea 300 yards from the ship. You don't celebrate. You pull up and look for the next one. Because there is always a next one. During the battle for Okinawa in 1945, the Hellcats fly ceaselessly. Mechanics sleep on the flight decks, curled up under the wings, refueling and rearming the planes as soon as they touch down. The engines are run until they are nearly red hot. The glamorous turkey shoot is over. This is a grinder. It is exhausting, terrifying work. But the aluminum tank holds the line. The Hellcat proves to be the only Allied fighter rugged enough to withstand the punishment of constant carrier operations and powerful enough to intercept the suicide divers before they strike. By the summer of 1945, the Hellcat has racked up a statistic that remains untouched in naval aviation history: 5,163. That is the number of confirmed kills credited to the F6F Hellcat. It accounts for 75% of all aerial victories recorded by the U.S. Navy in the Pacific. The flying brick that the Japanese laughed at has wiped the Imperial Air Force from existence. But as the atomic clouds rise over Hiroshima and Nagasaki and the war comes to a sudden, thunderous halt, the Hellcat faces its final, and perhaps most surprising, opponent: obsolescence. The age of the propeller is ending. The age of the jet is born, and the hero of the Pacific is about to be discarded as quickly as it was built. September 2nd, 1945, Tokyo Bay. The sky is weeping. A low, gray mist hangs over the water as General Douglas MacArthur signs the surrender documents on the deck of the USS Missouri. Then, a low rumble begins. It grows until it drowns out the waves, the voices, and the wind. Above the fleet, a formation of 450 carrier planes roars overhead. At the center of that formation is the F6F Hellcat. It is the victor's lap. The Hellcat has done everything asked of it. It grounded the Japanese Air Force. It protected the fleet. It brought thousands of boys home who otherwise would be resting at the bottom of the Pacific. But unlike the P-51 Mustang, which becomes an icon of speed, or the F-4U Corsair, which continues to fight in Korea, the Hellcat story ends almost the moment the ink dries on the surrender papers. The Hellcat was a war emergency fighter. It was built for a specific enemy in a specific time. It was built to brawl with Zeros at 300 miles per hour, not to chase MiGs at 600. The The jet age arrives with the violence of a thunderclap. The Navy wants speed. They want sleek, aerodynamic needles. The Hellcat is a sledgehammer in a world of scalpels. Within months of the war's end, the Hellcat is pulled from the frontline carriers. The Blue Giant is parked in storage yards in the Arizona desert, its paint baking in the sun. But the Hellcat has one final, thankless mission left. The Navy needs to test its new anti-aircraft missiles and jet fighters. They need a target that is tough, flies straight, and can take a beating. They strip the cockpits. They paint the tails bright red or high-visibility orange. They install radio control equipment. The plane that destroyed 5,000 enemy aircraft is renamed the F6F a target drone. For nearly a decade, the surviving Hellcats are launched from bases in California and the Pacific, only to be blown out of the sky by the very Navy they saved. It is a cruel, unceremonious end for a machine that defined air superiority. But watching old footage of these tests reveals something incredible. Even as a drone, even without a pilot, the Hellcat refuses to die. There are reports of Hellcat drones taking direct hits from missiles, losing half a wing, on fire, and still flying until they run out of fuel. Even in death, the Grumman Iron Works legacy holds true. The legacy. Today, only a handful of airworthy Hellcats remain. If you go to an air show, you might see one. It doesn't look fast standing next to an F-22 Raptor. It doesn't look elegant next to a Spitfire. It sits on the tarmac, hunched over, looking heavy and wide, but walk up to it. Look at the rivets. Look at the thick, squared-off wings. Close-up camera pan of the Hellcat's face, the intake chin, and propeller. Remember the Japanese pilots over Wake Island. Remember how they laughed at this flying brick. They saw the size and saw a weakness. They were wrong. That size allowed for 250 pounds of cockpit armor that stopped 20 mm cannon shells. That size carried 400 gallons of fuel that let it loiter over the fleet when others had to turn back. That size held the 6 guns that turned the Zero into a memory. The Hellcat wasn't built to be pretty. It wasn't built to be famous. It was built to be a shield. It produced 305 flying aces more than any other American fighter. But the most important statistic isn't the kill count. It's the number of empty bunks that didn't exist on American aircraft carriers because this plane brought the pilot home. The Zero was a sword-sharp, deadly, and brittle. The Hellcat was the shield that broke the sword. And when the job was done, the shield was set down quietly in the pages of history.